you should get a valuation 5 years prior. And you should always run your business as if you're selling it tomorrow, because there are opportunities that come up all the time, and there's life events that happen that change your perspective.
Welcome to the Insurance Leaders Lab podcast, where we decode leadership and operations in insurance organizations and offer practical strategies for simpler actions, better results, and a more fulfilling life. If you're an insurance professional looking to succeed as a leader, you've come to the right place. Our host, Nina Shepard, has been an insurance leader for over 3 decades and is also a professional executive coach for senior leaders in transition. Our guests are remarkable individuals from various insurance industry sectors and related fields. Together, we cut through the noise to discuss what works, what doesn't, and what's ahead, helping you to build up your leadership skills and achieve better results. New episodes are released bi-weekly on Thursdays. Subscribe now to get your thinking juices flowing, one episode at a time. Bold leaders, frank dialogue, actionable strategies. Welcome to the Insurance Leaders Lab. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to welcome an amazing guest, Carey Wallace, to the Insurance Leaders Lab podcast. Carey is the founder of Agency Focus, a consulting firm that provides valuation, perpetuation planning, acquisition support, financial and compensation analysis, and fractional CFO services to independent insurance agencies across the country. Over the past 16 years, Carey has worked with hundreds of agency owners, helping them understand their agency value and turn that knowledge into an actionable plan for their future. Carey is a certified exit planning advisor and a recognized expert in her field. She has presented to over 5,000 agencies this past year alone, and she is the co-host of the podcast Business Refocused, which highlights organizations that innovate and position themselves for growth and scale to maximize value. Carey is the mother of 2 and lives in Charleston with her husband Kevin and their dog Hudson. Good morning, Carey. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Good morning. I love that. I love that you ended it with Hudson. He's like the highlight of the whole thing. I love it.
Okay, that's great. Carey, I want to start by sharing a thought I had while listening to you speak at the recent FAIA Women in Insurance Summit. I thought of times when I sold my agency in 2004 and how naive and unprepared I was for the sale as an agency owner. As I looked around the room, I saw many agency owners taking notes like crazy as you spoke about benchmarking and the top 5 metrics to watch for. And I want to say, many agents put 10, 15 years of their best life in building the business, and you are there for them. And it's great that you're ready to help them build their future that they envision. Thank you for doing it. That's a very honorable job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was a very warm and welcoming room that day, wasn't it?
Absolutely. That was a great summit. Would you like to share how insurance journey and agent focus journey started for you?
I would love to. Yeah. So I think like many people, insurance found me. I wasn't looking for it. That's for sure. I started my career actually in a tech startup outside of DC in Northern Virginia, and thought that I was going to work in a tech company forever. We actually took that company from birth to IPO, which was a ton of fun. I learned a lot. It's definitely learning by fire, but that is where I first got some mergers and acquisition experience. I got a lot of business experience. And then as I shared that day, I have 2 girls, and I took a pretty long break, which a lot of females don't really talk about. But my oldest daughter has some special needs. So I stayed home with my girls for 12 years and raised them, advocated for both of my girls as best as I could. And I re-entered the workforce when my girls went to middle school. And when I did that, there was a local state association near me that was looking to merge the Big I and the PIA. I didn't have any idea what the Big I, the PIA, state associations. All I knew about insurance was my own coverage. I thought this is a great opportunity. It's a great way to dip my back into full-time work. I had consulted during the time when I was home with my girls, and I went to work for what was then the PIA of Ohio. We successfully managed the acquisition or the merger between Big I and PIA and became the OIA of Ohio. And at that point, there were some agents on the board that said, what is our value proposition as a state association? Now that we're one, we're no longer competing with each other. What can we do that's meaningful for agents? And at that point, we created valuation and perpetuation planning services because many agencies that are under 2 million in revenue weren't really being served by the people in that space. So I led that effort. We created valuation and perpetuation planning services that was accessible and affordable for you to use as a business planning tool rather than waiting when you're ready to sell. And I did that for many years under OIA. We also created a data analytics company that I was the CEO of. That's how I learned a great deal about this industry that I ended up making my career. And about 5 years ago, I went out on my own and started my own consulting company called Agency Focus. Because honestly, being the operations person, the lead consultant, and the CEO of a data analytics company was 3 full-time jobs. And I realized the thing that I got the most joy from was consulting with agents as closely as I possibly could. So at that point, I built Agency Focus. We're now 7 employees, work with hundreds of agencies every single year, which is a ton of fun. So that's my journey. Yeah.
That's an amazing story, Carey. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realize that you started your agency focus just 5 years ago. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
you are so well recognized in the insurance industry. So that's congratulations. This
Well,
is
thank
awesome.
you. Yeah.
And listen, you have a business, you consult, you manage the business, you speak at the conferences. I've seen you in many places. You also have your own podcast. I mean, wow, this is not 3 jobs. This is like 5, 5
It is.
jobs.
I didn't downsize, did I? I definitely didn't
It
downsize.
doesn't quite really look like that. Now, the question is, how do you manage all that? What's your personal winning formula? Would you like to share this one?
Oh, wow. That's an ever-changing answer, I will say. I think I've surrounded myself with some pretty strong people. I don't do this alone, that's for sure. For much of it, I get a great joy out of it. My team's 100% remote. So speaking at conferences and being around people is something I actually really need because most days I'm sitting in an office by myself with my team all scattered around the country, which is interesting. So I think I block my time really well and I focus and make sure that I schedule the time that I'm away at points of the, month that I'm not consulting with my clients and try to manage that as best as possible. I do my podcast with my daughter, which I absolutely love doing. My youngest daughter joined the company 2 years ago. And prior to that, we were doing a podcast together and what a joy that is. But we block our time. We actually batch record with our client or with our guests because it makes it so much easier and manageable. But to be quite honest, she does the heavy lifting with our podcast. So again, I delegate quite well in order to make sure that I can juggle all the stuff that we're doing. I think it's like
Okay.
anybody, right?
Well, it's not like anybody, but good leaders do delegate well because otherwise there's too much work that's never done. So
Very
yeah, we
true.
have to
Very
learn
true.
how to delegate well. I'm
Yes.
totally with you. Carey, our podcast is for insurance professionals and leaders who lead teams and drive operational change. We are decoding leadership and operations in insurance organizations and share practical tips for simpler actions, better results, and a more fulfilling life, which is also a very important piece of it, right? From your consulting perspective, and I know you work with many agencies, and I'm sure you see patterns which we, being inside the business, do not necessarily see every day. So what are the biggest financial blind spots that agency owners tend to have?
Well, I think that varies where you are in the life cycle of your agency, but financial life, blind spots, I think the biggest one that I would start with is compensation. If I work inside an agency, we benchmark that agency right away. The reason compensation goes to the top of the list is because if you don't get your comp structure right for your team, it takes up 50% of your resources or more. And it's hard to make up the difference in other parts of where you're allocating your resources. So understanding how compensation works in this industry is incredibly important. And you have a lot of people entering this industry from different vantage points. If you were a captive agent and you came into this industry, you don't understand how the standard compensation works. And you might repeat what your comp is in a captive agency and then have difficulty backing away from that compensation. The second reason I would say that it's a blind spot is once you're ready to exit, if your comp structure isn't correct, it could actually hurt your agency's opportunity in that process. So that's probably after we value an agency or after we benchmark an agency, one of the number one areas that we spend time trying to right size or correct what the comp structure is, not just for producers, but for account managers, CSRs, et cetera. The second part or additional challenge that you have when compensation is if I say account manager, CSR, producer, inside sales, we all mean different things. So the comp
Oh,
structure for those
absolutely.
roles could really, really vary. So I would start with that one, and I'm happy to go deeper on that if you'd like. But I think getting that right, I mean, you're ahead of the game of so many other people if you're able to get your arms around that.
Okay. Okay. So what does it mean to get it right? Where do I start? Let's give our listeners maybe three
Sure.
steps to start
Sure.
with.
Well, number one, classify your people in the right categories. If they're a salesperson and their main job is to sell, I'd put them in a producer category, and they should be commission based, not base pay forever. They should be on a validation schedule to be commission only and incentivized to do exactly what you want them to do. I did a study once where producers that were 100% base pay, the agency actually grew about 5% less points than another agency the same size with producers that were commission based. So you have to understand your comp structure should match your culture and what you're incentivizing your people to do. And if you have a person that's responsible for generating new business inside your agency, getting a base pay, those two things are not congruent. They should be getting rewarded. The more they write of new business, the better off their compensation is. So number one, classify your people into the right categories and then ask yourself, is my total compensation that I'm spending for my size agency within the benchmark? If you don't know what the benchmarks are, there are studies out there. There's a best practices study that tells you what percentage of your revenue should be going for your total comp. And it also tells you how much should I pay for new business and renewal in personal lines or commercial lines or life and health. So there's information available to you to say, am I aligned with what the industry standards are? Am I completely different than what the industry standards are? And do that for your producers, for your service people, for your account managers. When it comes to service and account managers, not only do you want to know, is my compensation right, but am I expecting them to manage the size book? Am I expecting their capacity to be appropriate as well? And then you'll know, am I staffed right? Am I compensating right? And am I marketable in the industry when I want to either transition internally or sell externally? And if you're not, how do I move from one comp that I have to another in order to get myself positioned appropriately?
When we are talking about account managers and their books of business, is there any benchmarking study which would help me to benchmark the book? Is it a 5 million book? Is it a 10 million book? Is it a 1 million book?
Yeah. That's the other thing. Make sure your language is the same as the people that you're talking to. When I talk to agency owners and they want to get a valuation, for instance, and I say, how big is your agency? And they say 5 million. I have to stop and say, are we talking 5 million in premium? Are we talking 5 million in revenue? Like, what are we talking about? So
You caught
same thing
me.
goes.
Good.
So the same thing goes for your account managers. We need to know, are we talking a 5 million premium book that we're talking about? And then is it an account manager for personal lines or commercial lines? And even further than that, is it a book that's written in standard markets or E&S, because volume of work and the complexity of that work varies greatly based on where you're located, which carriers you write with, and what you're writing. A niche-based agency could potentially have account managers that manage a much larger book than someone who is a generalist, and they've got to straddle multiple different things in order to figure out how to manage that. So one of the biggest questions is, what comp structure should I have? And what makes it complex is, what's the work that they're doing and what's the appropriate thing for them to expect? There is no hard and fast, if you're an account manager that's commercial lines, this is the exact number you should be doing. There's always an asterisk around that says, is it niche based? Is it small commercial? Is it a generalist book? If it's personal lines, is it high net worth? Is it coastal? Is it, you know what I mean? So
I
do
was
you have to
hoping
put
to
it?
have a simple
Yeah.
answer. Thank you,
Yeah.
Carey.
I would love to give you a simple answer, but there are asterisks. And even when you go to a benchmarking report, take it with a grain of salt. These are guardrails, if you will, to say, if I'm way below, I should be thinking about something different. If I'm way above, I might be burning out my team. And if I'm in the middle, does my book have characteristics that could be different than this study that is generalizing all agencies? So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but it can give you the guardrails to know exactly where you should be. And with this particular, metric of capacity, technology and AI is changing this very, very rapidly. So I could tell you the average agency is 220,000 in revenue per employee. That's a great place to start. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that we have some of our CFO clients that are operating at a 400 revenue per employee because they're tech forward, they're leveraging AI, they're very niche based. So their structure is very different than the average agency, and it's moving and shifting pretty quickly.
That's actually very interesting that you mentioned that. Do you see that in real life already, that tech forward agencies are like producing at a much higher rate?
They are. Yeah. So that's the whole idea is, if you're going to invest in technology and AI, you should be asking yourself, A, what problem is it going to solve? And how is it going to create efficiency and productivity inside the business? Because if all you're doing is adding tech and adding more people, it's not actually working for you. There are plenty of agencies that are very, very tech forward, been thinking about this for a long time, utilizing automation, utilizing all kinds of different things, including AI, that their productivity across their service team is far different. And the body of work that each of their producers are doing, each of their account managers are doing, might be pushed to a VA, or it might be automated by technology and eliminate some of the administrative work and move them to an advisory role. That's the whole goal. So yes, that is definitely happening and will continue to move pretty fast along agencies that are leveraging these tools.
Oh, yeah. Next year or 2 are probably going to be the most dynamic in the last 20, 30 years of us knowing insurance. I'm really looking forward to see where we land in 3, 5 years. I would be very interested to see that. Carey, you mentioned that you also are doing a CFO work for the agencies. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Before we jump to that, you talk about what's going to happen over the next 2 or 3 years. I say all the time, I think that this is the most exciting time to be in our industry. And for people like my daughter who have 30 plus years ahead of them, what an exciting and unbelievable opportunity there is inside our industry if you lean in. So yes, I'm happy to talk about CFO work. As I mentioned, when I was at the state association, we thought, creating valuation and perpetuation planning was a huge need. It certainly was for agencies that, the 83% of independent agencies that are under 1.25 million, they really didn't have a place to go. Well, we started with just doing that, valuation and perpetuation planning. But the reality is, once you give someone the report and say, here's the areas of strength, here's some areas of weakness, they said, that's fantastic, but what do I do now? And they would engage us to consult in compensation, or they would engage us to consult in stratifying their book and thinking about, how do I service different clients different ways? Or how do I discern and make decisions about technology and calculate this ROI that you're talking about? So all the things that I was describing, they didn't have anyone on their team that thought in a financial way in order to put that on paper or measure it. It was them as the owner, and that's not their forte. That they don't have a finance background. That's not what they're looking for. So about 2 years into me doing valuation and perpetuation planning services, I got asked so many times, how do I actually put this in practice? I created Fractional CFO, where we engage with independent agents on a monthly basis. We identify 3 to 4 projects that they're working on, create a budget and a forecast for the agency. We manage to the budget with them, so we can say, here's our plan. Here's our short-term plan for the year based on the goals that we have. Here's the 3-year projection of where we want to see the agency go. And here's the identified projects from a financial perspective that we want to tackle. And I'm an extension of their team, or someone on my team is an extension of their team to help work those projects, manage that budget to actual, pivot when something changes. And typically it looks like I'm getting ready to hire someone. Is this the right time to hire? Is this the right role to hire? If so, what compensation should I use? Or I have a really key person on my team. How do I create an incentive comp plan so they stay with me into the future? It could be that they want to transition internally and they want to know how to model an internal transition from one owner to the next generation or to a partner. That might be a project we work on throughout the year. Or it could be, I want to acquire. And so I want to get my agency as healthy as possible. And then when I have acquisition opportunities, our team puts those two, their agency and the one that they're looking at, together in order to help them make a strong financial decision about that acquisition, or many things in between. But it's a subscription base where we work with them every single month. We create and develop really deep relationships with those customers.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm able to move the value of their agency up by working together. So yeah, that's the whole idea.
Oh, wow. You're doing much more than I thought you'd do as a fractional CFO. That's invaluable service for smaller agencies who cannot afford to have a full-time financial person, financial strategist on their board. That's
Yeah.
great. What would be your advice to the agencies? What do you see? At what time that service becomes especially valuable?
Well, there's a reason why 83% of independent insurance agencies are 1.25 million in revenue or below. And it's because people wear too many hats. We talked about it earlier. In my business, when I first started, I wore all the hats. I'm sure, Nina, you wore all the hats inside your agency at one point.
Yep.
That creates a ceiling at some point that you can't get beyond and your team can't get beyond. You have to have a certain amount of volume and resources to be able to afford to start outsourcing these things. But we have agencies as small as 750,000 in revenue that engage us, because at that point, that owner might be selling, servicing, doing all the strategic work. They're really at a pivot point where that can become a lifestyle agency, or it can be a growth and trajectory agency. So at that point, they might say, I need someone to help me and figure out how to make these investments and really manage getting to the next level. Our core group of agencies pretty much are somewhere between 1 million and 3 million in revenue. And then once they're over 5 million in revenue, they might have their own onboard CFO inside their agency. So it's really somewhere between that middle. And I speak in in size, it also is someone who wants to grow. If you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
want to do that, I'll infuriate you because I'll be trying to set you up to maximize and grow and all of those things. And if you're pretty happy where you are, we're not the people for you. You know what I mean? Like I might ignore them.
Absolutely.
They might
Yeah.
avoid talking to me. So anyway, yeah. I don't want that. That's not good. So if you have the right
Good.
mindset and you have the right resources, it is a fraction of the cost of what it would be to hire somebody that's full time for you. And that's not the only benefit. I always forget to say this, and I think it's important. If you hire someone to be on your team and they work inside your agency every single day, they get to see your agency, but we have the benefit of seeing 40 agencies, and I can bring, or our team, whoever it is that's working with you, can bring the insights that other agencies are dealing with. And you don't have to make the same mistakes. You can learn from their experiences through us. I'm not going to be specific about it, but say, here are the things they weighed and here's the conclusion that they made. And you're able to speed up some processes and bring perspective that otherwise I wouldn't have. So that's a huge benefit, is perspective, and seeing many agencies, not just when we value them, but working with them every day and through our masterminds and all of that. So
You are absolutely right, Carey. That is the number one thing that every person working inside the agency, like I'm an operations manager, every financial director, they are lacking that perspective of what are other people doing. For example, at the moment, talking about technology and AI, what are the tools you are using? Are the tools I'm using? What do you see works? What's not? This is so important. That's, by the way, one of the reasons why I personally started this podcast,
ah,
because I truly believe it's necessary for people to be sharing and listen to others and learn from others on topics that are close to our hearts.
absolutely. I agree with you. No doubt. Yeah.
Carey, so many agencies create their business and put their efforts in building the business to eventually sell it or give it to their coming generation. But the valuation comes into the play one way or another. So let's talk about that. That is something that you do, right? So what specific factors actually increase valuation? When you're coming in as a fractional CFO and you are arriving to the conclusion together with your agency owners that, let's say, they want to sell in 5 years, what would be the focus? What you suggest needs to be the focus for them that would
Yeah.
help
That's
them to maximize the value?
super great question. So obviously, every agency is different, and we would assess where they are. But when you ask me what are the drivers of value inside an agency, I'm going to start with the big guys. Number one, an agency that's growing will always be more valuable with one that is flat or declining. So that's easy for everybody to understand. If you add the second most impactful metric, is it growing and able to do it profitably? So is it maintaining double digit growth and also operating profitably? That becomes a much more valuable agency that's growing but can't do it profitably. They've invested so much that their profitability levels are beyond or under the benchmarks. And then the question is it transferable? So you can have a growing agency that's super profitable, but if that growth is all dependent on the owner who's going to leave in 3 years, then it is not as transferable than an agency that has 4 producers that are all in different demographics, where 3 of them are going to remain with the agency. Well, that just became the more valuable of the 2, because the predictability of an agency really lies in that transferability. Do we have a reasonable expectation that the agency can continue to operate this way into the future? Becomes the thing that you have to really dig into, which is why when someone asks me, well, Why can't you tell me the value of an agency if they have the same revenue levels? Can't you just
Right.
estimate it for me? And the answer is no. I would love to be able to do that, but I would be lying to you. And anyone who does that for you is lying to you, because you have to go deeper and say, what's causing the growth? Is it because it's all referral based and everybody is doing business with Agency Focus because they want to work with Carey Wallace, and Carey Wallace is retiring, and that referral will start to dry up when they realize Carey Wallace is no longer with Agency Focus? That's an easy one, because when you build a brand, that is the risk that you're creating, that it's based on you. And that's true for every agency owner. Many
Absolutely.
agency owners where the last name is the name of the agency, they have that challenge and they have to overcome it. Or is the growth coming from a niche that you've created and you're well known in that industry, and your agency comes up every time that everybody's looking for a, veterinarian insurance, and you're going to come up every single time, or whatever that is? Or is it a combination? Do you have referral partners? Do you have SEO? If it's widely variety, it's more likely to be sustainable over time and not dependent on one thing. Same thing goes with your carrier mix. If you have 80% of your business with one carrier and that carrier pulls out of your market, I don't need to tell you how difficult that is. And I don't need to tell most of these listeners probably how difficult that is. So
Yeah.
it's about the transferability as well. And that could be whether or not there's contracts with your employees, who owns the business. If you have producer owned books, that also creates some uncertainty about the ongoing operation of the agency and the concentration by account. If you have one account that makes up 20% of your book and you lose it, as an owner and a buyer, you understand the risk there. So there's lots of different factors, but you start with, is an agency growing? Is it profitable? And can we expect that performance to go into time? And what are the things that would cause that performance to not continue? And how severe is it? That's really what we're asking.
So many factors.
27
Yeah.
different risk factors when I
Oh,
value an
really?
agency.
You have
Yes,
them listed,
yes,
27 risk factors. Wow.
yes.
That's
So
that's cool. And from that perspective, I often talk to people who say, "Oh, I have no intention to sell, for example, in the next 5 years." And that's great. But even if there is a slightest possibility that you are going to sell at some time in the future, it's a very valuable conversation to review yourself versus those 27 risk factors and make kind of a conscious choices of where am I going and what am I building, right?
that's right.
So
That's
that
right.
it's could be maximized in value when I decide to sell. That's cool.
It's really funny that you say, and a lot of agency owners think, I don't need to get a valuation until I'm ready to sell. But the reality is, if you wait until 6 months before you want to sell, or 3 months before you want to sell, and you get a
Oh,
valuation
right.
at that point, you will get a range of value for your agency, but you will get something that you can't change, because there's not enough time to rethink your strategy on where your leads are coming from, or rethink your carrier strategy and maybe market so you can balance out your carrier strategy, or get contracts in place with your people, or introduce your staff into your account so you can make sure that they're going to stay and trust your people when you're exiting. Those kinds of things take time. You should get a valuation 5 years prior, and you should always run your business as if you're selling it tomorrow, because there are opportunities that come up all the time, and there's life events that happen that change your perspective. One of the biggest risk factors inside an agency is having no perpetuation plan. A single owner at or nearing retirement age with no perpetuation plan, how fast things change that you have to do something. And if you're not running your agency like you're selling it tomorrow, then there's a lot of catch up and there's a delay in
So true.
time. Yes, don't think about planning or getting a health checkup for your agency when the time comes, because that's too late. You asked me, what are some things I would have an agency do in order to maximize their value? So number one, I would have them look at their financials in a different way. The reality is, remember, I run a small business, you run a small business, we're all business owners, and there are tax strategies inside your agency to minimize the taxes that we pay that might cause us to put expenses through our business that aren't exactly related to the business. Let's just say there's some discretionary expenses that could be through there. And I'm not the IRS. This is not me, judging anyone, but getting a handle on what that volume of discretionary expenses are and being able to redeploy those in a way that could drive growth or profitability could, for the 3 years prior to you exiting, make a difference, a significant difference in an agency. So here's what I mean. If you are running cars and home insurance, your business building insurance, your golf memberships, et cetera. And you take all of this money and when you add it all together, it's $65,000 a year, or maybe $165,000 a year. And you took that money 5 years prior and you hired 2 producers that validate by the time that you are selling your value for your agency. Number one, the transferability of it goes up exponentially. The growth factor will go up exponentially. And you've redeployed that and made it much more transferable than what it would be if you just continued to pay yourself through the agency and these discretionary expenses. Seeing the power of that and putting together a plan could cause the value of your agency to be very, very different than what it was the first time we ran the value of your agency. So it doesn't sound like much, but when you put it together and that continues beyond you, it becomes pretty significant. So there's one
Carey?
example. Yeah.
Carey, this is a very interesting example. It sounds like you're having a very brave conversations with some of those agency owners.
Sure. Yeah. I told you we get to know each other very, very well. But the reality is they're hiring me to tell them how to maximize the value of their agency and make strong financial decisions. And what's funny is it's right there. It's not like we're doing something crazy, but when you show someone, it's hard to unsee it. You know what I mean? Like you have to be able to communicate it in a way that they can see the impact and be able to take action and put the story behind the numbers, not just numbers on a page. Like I also think that's incredibly important to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So true. Awesome. Carey, as we are approaching the end of our conversation, what is one financial habit that you would advise every agency leader to start doing now?
Have a budget. Have a plan for your business. Do not wing it. Put it on paper. Have something to compare to that will ground you in what you're trying to move forward, because the world around you changes very quickly. So if you put a budget and a plan together, it allows you to accomplish so much more. Even if you vary from it, at least you have the idea of where you should be, and you can make decisions much faster as you're going along your way. Without that plan, some agency owners wait till the end of the year to know how much profit I have to make a decision. And you just wasted maybe 8 months of time where you could have looked at a projection and said, nope, I can pull the trigger right now. So build the plan for your business, compare to it. Don't feel chained by it, but use that plan to allow you to make faster and more informed decisions. I think everybody should have a plan for their business. And if you don't, listen, there's so many successful people that do everything based on gut. That's fine. But your gut being validated by a plan allows you to move much quicker and much more efficiently as you plan for your business.
That's a great advice, Carey. It has been such a valuable conversation. Is there anything else you would like to share before we finish?
I think the last thing I would share is, numbers can be intimidating to people that love people and not financials. And we do our best to take the mystery out of the numbers and really turn them into something that you can sink your teeth into and actually feel empowered by. So I would tell you, if you ever talk to someone about getting the value of your agency or the numbers and they made you feel like you didn't know enough, then you're talking to the wrong people. These are hard conversations and you need to surround yourself with people that are going to put it in a way that you can understand and feel confident in your decisions. Don't be afraid of your numbers. If you are, or if someone's made you feel that way, then you were talking to the wrong people. So that's what I would leave you with.
Okay, that's great. Carey, if our listeners would like to talk to the right people,
Sure.
Where could they find more information about you?
Yeah, so our company name is called Agency Focus. It's www.agency-focus.com. I'm on LinkedIn. My name's spelled Carey, last name's Wallace, Wallace. So you can find me on LinkedIn for sure. You can find me on our website. You can find me all over the place. So yeah, I'm not hard to find at all.
Carey, what I appreciate about our conversation today is that it reminds us that financial clarity is not separate from leadership. It is part of everyday leadership. And when we understand our business more clearly, we make better decisions, we reduce unnecessary stress, we build healthier operations, and we create more choices for ourselves for the future. So whether you're thinking about growth, stability, succession planning, or simply wanting to run a stronger agency, I hope these conversations gave you both perspective and practical next steps. Carey, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your insights with our listeners.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Nina.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Insurance Leaders Lab podcast. If you like what you've heard, please like it and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. If there is anyone else in your circle who can benefit from listening, please share this link with them. Remember, this is a podcast for you, and your opinion matters to me, so if there is any topic you'd like to bring up, please send me a note to nina@ninashepard.com. I'll see you back in 2 weeks on Thursday morning. Bye for now.